Hello YouTubers, greetings from Southern Colorado. I'm Dan, you're watching Mad Adventures. It's February 23rd, 2025, and it's a beautiful day here in Colorado. As you can see, it's about 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's already about 61 degrees. So I should be out riding, but I'm in the shop today. There's a project, if you remember, I'm building my brother's 2024 Aprilia Taureg up, and the last project you watched me do was install this center stand. And you remember from that video that I left the bottom two bolts slightly loose so that I could come back in and install this skid plate. We both bought our protective gear from T-Rex Racing. This is a high quality bit of gear. They bill it as being 4 millimeters thick, but I put calipers on it yesterday, and it actually is slightly thicker than that. It's almost 4.5 millimeters. You can see it's got all of these machine welds on it, and they look like they're pretty robust. I think this will be a good quality piece of gear, so we'll put that on today. One thing I really like about this, so it made this skid plate stand out from, say, Outback Motor Tech or SW Motec, is it's got a oil pan drain plug hole, and it has this trap door over the oil filter, so that you don't have to remove the skid plate every time you change the oil. We plan on putting a lot of miles on these motorcycles, and I'm the one that ends up doing all of the motorcycle maintenance for 6 to 8 different bikes. So I don't want to have to remove the skid plate every time I change the oil. All right. So, well, the first step in any motorcycle project, obviously, crack open a beer. Second step for this project, we've got to remove the stock skid plate, and we're also going to remove this exhaust header cover. The skid plate won't fit with that on. I wanted to keep it on my project, but it's just, there's no way. So we got to take those two things off. Okay, so the stock skid plate, very easy to remove. You're using the 8 millimeter socket with I use a 1/4 inch drive because I can find my adapter from 3/8 and 1/4. So 4 bolts, 1, 2 on the front here, and then the very last 2 on the very bottom. These other bolts, these other 4 bolts, are actually a 10 millimeter nut. Those are just holding rubber bumpers up against the bottom of the motorcycle. You don't need to remove those to remove the stock skid plate. Just 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy peasy. Okay, stock skid plate is out. Just those 4 bolts that I told you about. Easy. Easy as pie. Now we're going to remove this head gasket cover. And it's just this little 4 millimeter hex key socket. There's a little screw up here holding it on, and that's hard to do this with one hand. Let's take that off. Just comes right out. Wasn't on there very hard. You can see they use a little red thread locker on that to keep it in there. Of course, it's getting a lot of heat. I think it goes without saying you want to do this when the bike is cold, right? And it sits in here on a little bracket. I don't know if you can see down in there. It just pulls off. It just pulls off this rubber coated bracket right there. So that's off. All right, we're halfway done. Okay, next step in the process, we're going to install these 2 brackets, one on each side. The more radically angled one, I don't know if you can see that, on the driver's side, and the less angled one on the passenger side, or the rear brake side, if that makes it simple. And if you remember right, if you remember from the other project, the center stand project, the brackets at the bottom were threaded. Well, this is the same way. So we're going to use this, our 20 millimeter nut, our dome hex head nut, to go through here and through this little slot. Okay, you can see that. We want this in here, and we want it just loose, but not so loose that it's all floppy. Let's get this started. Give it just a little bit of a tightening with a 5mm hex socket. I can still move it back and forth, but it doesn't fall down because you're going to want it to be roughly in place when you get started. All right, same with this one. So actually check it. It comes out like this. Can you see how that angle is supposed to be angled away from the skid plate? Okay, next step in the process, we're going to remove this bolt from the motorcycle, and we're on the right hand side of the bike. If you were riding the bike, brake pedal side, rear brake pedal side. So this bolt right here, and it's just about perpendicular with the top of the engine case here. So this one will come into play later on when we're installing the engine guards, but for right now, for today's project, just this one. Okay, we've got that bolt out, and you can see it's about 2 inches long. This is the stock bolt, and you can see they used red thread locker when they installed this. We're going to be reinstalling it with blue thread locker, but we're going to use the 70mm bolt that came with the project. It's the second longest bolt. Because we're installing engine guards, lower and upper, on this side of the bike, we will not be using a spacer, just the bolt with the washer that's supplied. Yeah, this is the tricky part of this project, is holding this up, getting this installed. And you can see I didn't put any thread locker on the bolt yet. That's because we're just getting it all set up so that we can come in later on after we've got everything situated, aligned, accurately placed. We'll put the thread locker on then. And I just left that. You can see it's real loose. Don't have any intentions of tightening it down yet. In fact, I won't tighten it down today because I'll come in. We'll use this mounting point later on for the upper and lower engine guards. Okay, on the left side of the bike, kickstand side, we're going to remove this bolt from the motorcycle. You can see it comes down from this arm. It's right here on top of the engine case. This one will come into play later on. For today, just this one. Okay, back to the left side of the bike, the kickstand side. We've removed the bolt that we talked about, and now we're going to put this up, the skid plate up to it. We're going to install. We're using the longest bolt, the 80mm bolt that came with the project. On this side of the bike, we're using the 8mm spacer that came with the project because we plan to install lower engine guards and upper engine guards. They're all going to mount to this point, all three. So for right now, we're just going to, let's get the spacer in behind the bracket. We're just going to loose mount it in here, get it set up to where it's kind of accurate, and then we'll solve the back side. Just so it's holding it up. We're not thread locking anything, tightening anything down. Okay, just let's see if I can get you down in here. We're on the driver's side of the bike, the kickstand side of the bike again. We're installing this lower part of the skid plate, and remember, this is the part of the center stand that we intentionally left loose because we knew we were going to use that mounting point. I don't know if you can see that. It's this nut or bolt. And I think earlier in the video I said we would just reuse that one for the same thing. We won't be. It's not long enough. It's not, this part of the bracket is not threaded of the skid plate. So we'll use the specific bolts that are provided with the skid plate package for that. And it's real simple to get off. I'll use the 17mm ratcheting wrench, and I'll remove these two and install the new bolts. Right, we're on the last phase of the project. Let me get you started up in here, see if I can get you close enough you can see what I'm doing. So we're going to install these last two bolts at the bottom end of the skid plate. I'm on the kickstand side of the bike, and I'll put the first one in. Okay, so the instructions call for these two brackets, or these two bolts on the rear end of the skid plate, to be torqued down to 35 foot-pounds. In fact, all of the M10 bolts on the project are torqued to 35 foot-pounds, and the M8 bolt, these two here, are supposed to be torqued down to 15 foot-pounds. So I can reach this side with my torque wrench. I can't with the other side, but I might as well torque this one properly if we can. So let's do that right now. Okay, we're going to start by installing the engine guards. Now we've installed the skid plate. I'm going to start with the lower engine guards. This is how they're oriented on the bike. If I'm riding the bike, going down the road, this is the right side with a short bracket on this side, or short flange on that side. You see that? And the other side, the left side, has a much longer flange, just different mounting points. Comes with 4 bolts, a 110 millimeter bolt, 2 60 millimeter bolts, a 30 millimeter bolts, all with washers. Comes with a 10 millimeter spacer, a 13 millimeter spacer, and a 38 millimeter spacer. For the project, we'll need an 8 millimeter hex socket, a 6 millimeter hex socket, and we'll need a 13 millimeter socket just to remove the OEM hardware. Okay, starting with the left side, the kickstand side of the bike, we'll remove this bolt right here, right underneath the shifter lever, and you can see how it's going to go on. It's got that large. The left side is the side with a much larger flange. It's going to come up here, and then it's going to come up here to our common mounting point. The skid plate, the upper and the lower engine guards all sit on this mounting point on this side of the bike. And this mounting point on this side of the bike. Which one you do first, I don't think it really matters that much. T-Rex really doesn't specify. It doesn't say which one should go on the top, which one should go on the bottom. When I installed all of these things on my motorcycle, I ended up starting with the lower engine crash guards, and that seemed to work out pretty good for me. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. Okay, you can see how I started with the spacer inside of the bracket, and I'll get this just kind of finger tight so that it stays kind of in place. When we get to the upper engine guards, we're not trying to hold all 3 things up at the same time. Okay, right hand side of the bike. First step is we're going to remove this bolt right here, this one that sits right underneath the engine case, and then we're going to mount up to here and here, just like so. Tip for you, I ended up going and getting the longer extension for this nut so I could clear the, or bolt, so I could clear the brake pedal. Okay, so this is what came out of that hole. That's the OEM bolt. To see it's got a big old flanged shaped spacer there. We're going to replace that with just the M30, the shortest bolt that came in the project, and no spacer. Just for a minute, just there. We're using that 13 millimeter spacer on the inside of that flange. You notice I'm not using any thread locker just yet. Just locking everything up, getting it all set where I want it. And then when I got bolts tightened down a little bit, I'll come back in and start thread locking them. So I don't have to juggle the whole project with a thread lock on the bolt, trying to get it into these little spots. All right, the 2 pieces meet in the middle. You got these little 8 millimeter bolts right here. One just comes all the way out. And if you got them angled right, helps with the threading process right there. Just like so. You know, on each of these bolts, it has two washers. Large washer to the inside, the smaller lock washer up against the bolt head. And again, just hand tightening this right now. All right, upper engine guards. So with T-Rex, you kind of, when you buy all three sets, the skid plate, the lower engine guards, and the upper engine guards, you get three different sets of instructions, and each one assumes that that's the only thing that you're installing, except that they do give some direction that if you're installing the skid plate without the lower engine guard, then use this bolt. If you're installing the lower engine but not the upper engine guard, then use this bolt. It gets pretty confusing. So we're at the stage we're at the upper engine guards, and this is the hardware that comes with it. You have two 70 millimeter bolts. You got a 40 millimeter bolt and a 30 millimeter bolt. You get an 18 millimeter spacer and a 21 millimeter spacer. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this up to the bike, see what we need to do. I don't believe that we'll use these two bolts. The instructions call for this bolt on the left side and this bolt on the right side. I think we'll use the same two on the common mounting point. We'll just use the same bolt that we used for the lower engine guard and the skid plate for this mounting point on both sides. I hope that makes sense. Okay, starting on the left side, we're going to remove this bolt right here underneath the fairing. See if I can put that in perspective. Right at the bottom of the plastics, above the engine case, right here, there's a bolt here, and then our common mounting point for everything else. We'll also take that out and put it in. Right in between, that spacer goes right in between the skid plate and the lower guard. We go to reinstall. And it's kind of handy. We left everything semi-tight so that it stays in place while we get our guard in. This is the stock bolt that came out of the bike, and this is the one that we're going to replace it with. You see, it's roughly the distance, or roughly the thickness of the bracket here. This is always the hard part, is trying to get all of these things to line up, get your bolt faced into the hole properly, and get started. This is the hard part about this project altogether. All right side of the bike, the brake pedal side, pretty much the same. We've got a same bolt on right underneath the fairing right here. We'll remove that, and we'll tie in our engine guard like, sorry about that. Like so. All right side of the bike, pretty much the same. We've got a bolt right here underneath the fairing, and our multiple 3-place mounting point right here. We'll remove these two bolts, and we'll install the upper guard like so. Okay, this is what the finished product looks like. I've gone through and taken out all of these M10 bolts and torqued them down to 35 foot-pounds, like the instructions say. So the instructions were a little vague. On the lower, these M8 bolts, they wanted them to be torqued down to 12 foot-pounds, but on the upper, the M8 bolts, they suggest torquing them down to 15 foot-pounds. So that's what I did. I don't think that I don't think they meant to be ambiguous like that, but that's just what I did. Anyway, well, it was fun doing this little project. Stay tuned for the next one. Probably gonna involve putting some power to a GPS unit up here, and I've got a Thunderhawk device that I'm gonna install the next project. So stay tuned.